Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, sorry about that. All right, we'll go ahead and start the meeting. We'll call the meeting to order. And can you give a roll call, please?
Sure. Member Dosty?
Here.
Member Downs?
Here.
Member Gary?
Here.
Member Hamilty? I hope I'm pronouncing it right.
Yep, here.
Member Johns? Not here. Member Leon?
Here.
Member Locke?
Present.
Member Newton?
Here.
Member Oliver?
Here.
Member Olenek?
Here.
Member Timken?
Here.
Member Vidal? Not here. Member Wong?
Here.
And Member Wright?
Here.
Okay, Mayor.
All right, we'll go ahead and open it up. We'll go ahead and open it up for public comment.
Yeah, good evening, everybody. How's it going? So just for the record, how many people on this commission that were actually selected as part of the process and all that, how many didn't show up tonight? What was it, 2? Well, those people obviously don't care. So who's a substitute for those people? Where's the alternates? What's going on with this program? This is the first meeting and people aren't showing up? Huh, kind of interesting. I'm here. You know, I was selected on this thing from the get-go. Everybody knows that. Oh, and then everybody wants to take me off of it? Everybody knows that too, right? When I'm the most helpful person. Everybody said my application was great. I was already selected fair and square. Just because I happen to be on the Social and Economic Justice Commission, you want to take me off, but at the same time, yet you want somebody from the SEJC to be on it. So that's where I don't understand. You see, I can't be on it because I can't be on 2 commissions. Well, there's somebody else here on 2 commissions. I mean, so it's okay for one person, but not somebody else. It doesn't seem very social or just. A lot of things going on behind the scenes, a lot of dirty tricks. I've got a lot. I've already done 6 months of this task force. I've already done things. Has anybody else even started yet? What has anybody else on this commission done so far to bring to the table for this task force? That's what I want to know. Has anybody started yet? Because I started way back in November. I started way back when. So if you want solutions, I've got solutions. And are you guys ready for this? Are you ready? Because you all are not thinking outside the box here. Because you think this policing task force is Albany police, right? Wrong. It's not just Albany police. You got 10 police forces in Albany. You got Albany police. You got East Bay Regional Park police. You got USDA police. You got BART police. You got California Highway Patrol. You got Alameda County Sheriff. You got state police. You got federal police. So when you're talking about policing in Albany, you need to bring all 10 of these to the table, not just Chief Geisberger right here. Where's Alameda County Sheriff? Where's BART Police? Where's all the other policing in Albany? Because they all have jurisdiction. This is more than just one police force, everybody. It's all 10.
Thank you, Jeremiah, for your comment. Thank you. Next, please.
That's all.
All right, thank you so much. We'll go ahead and move from public comment. This is our first meeting, so wanted to see if anyone had any announcements, anything they would like to bring forth within the community at this time. All right. We'll go down to item number 6, and we'll do brief introductions. So each person will have 1 minute to introduce themselves and provide any information that they would like the committee to know about them. So I'll have Ann, if you can go around and do a roll call, and then that person will be able to introduce themselves. Thank you.
If it's okay, I'd like to have the chief of police introduce himself first.
Fine, thank you.
Great. Thank you. I'm John Geisberger. I'm your police chief. And I just wanted to thank everybody for being willing to volunteer for this task force. I know it's going to take a lot of your time. I want to reassure you the police department is here to be a resource for you throughout this process and available to help. And I look forward to learning more about what we can do to better serve our community. So thank you again.
Thank you so much, Chief.
Member Dosty.
Hi, I'm Corey Dosty. I'm the SEJC Chair of the Social and Economic Justice Commission. My pronouns are co-cos or they, them. He, him is also good. Please do not call me she. I'm not a woman. I'm non-binary. I'm also transgender. These are some of my most salient identities. I'm also disabled and fat. I'm seeing a maybe unable to hear. I'll talk a little louder. I've been involved with the Oakland Community Ready Corps, Accomplices and Allies, volunteering for them and the Anti-Police Terror Project since May, June of last year, when many of us became radicalized around the murder of George Floyd. I've been involved in anti-racism activism and have followed the work of Dean Spade and critical prison abolitionists and police abolitionists for a number of years. And I look forward to contributing in the vein of critical resistance. Thank you.
Member Downs.
Thank you. I appreciate everyone being here. I know we've got a lot to do, so I'll keep my introduction relatively brief. I've lived in Albany 6 years. I am a professor of history at UC Davis. I study slavery and emancipation. I've written on slave patrols and have students who study history, development of incarceration, and other topics related to those issues, and have been interested in related issues for quite a while. So moved here about 6 years ago, and I'm excited to be on this, served on the SEJC as chair last year, which helped to call for the creation of this task force. So I'm excited to be here and look forward to meeting you all.
Member Hamady.
Hi, yeah, my name's Matt. I am a parent in Albany. My children attend Marin Elementary. They are mixed race, Black, and my main motivation, admittedly, is personal and wanting to protect them and their future. But obviously, I care about all of our children and all of the citizens in this city, residents of this city, and I'm really excited to be part of this and hope that we can take some meaningful action. And we have some decent precedent set by other cities, including Berkeley. So we're not starting from scratch, which is good. And looking forward to learning from everyone.
And Member Leon.
Hi, sorry, I was just changing my monitor. When I'm looking here, I'm actually looking at you. So I just want to apologize for that. I am a consultant and a coach. I mainly do work around race and equity issues. Previously, I used to work for Alameda County, and in that role, I was doing a lot of coalition building, and also was administrator for CASA, the Court Appointed Special Advocates, and the Juvenile Justice Health Center. So I've had at least 8 years of experience working with probation and also most of the schools in Alameda County. So this is something I'm very interested in and deeply care about. Thank you.
Member Locke.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Justin Locke. Like many people here, or I'm assuming all people, I'm an Albany resident. In my professional career, I work with the U.S. Department of Justice Community Relations Service. It's a small agency within the U.S. Department of Justice dedicated to resolving community-based tensions and disputes arising out of race, color, or national origin, as well as response to and prevention of violent hate crimes on the basis of race, color, national origin, gender identity, sexual orientation, religion, and disability. I've done this work for over 12 years, full time. And so policing issues are something that are very much a part of not only my professional experience, but my personal experience and my interest. And so I'm just excited that there's this functioning body in my hometown that's looking to improve policing and look at some best practices and to have more effective and responsive public safety and law enforcement.
Member Oliver.
Hi, my name is Malia. I use she, her pronouns. I'm a recent Albany High School graduate, class of 2020, and a current college student. Yeah, very interested in social justice and helping serve my community. So that's why I'm here today.
Member Timken.
Hi, I'm Alice Simpkin. She and they pronouns work for me. I grew up in Albany and I graduated around 10 years ago. Limited interactions with the police force. I have a background in communications and nonprofit advocacy, and a master's in political science. And I'm going to be pursuing a PhD in political science at Syracuse this fall. I will say for the community that I did expect potentially to start with this task force a little bit earlier, and so I have moved to Syracuse. I'm still registered in Albany as a voter and a resident, but that is changing currently. So thank you.
Member Wong.
Hey all, I'm a junior in Albany High School. I don't have much experience as most people here. My activism career has been mostly involved in anti-racist movements and co-hosting safety awareness workshops for vulnerable communities. And I look forward to working with you all.
And Mayor Gary.
Thank you, Ann. Hi, I'm Mayor Janelle Gary, currently serving as the mayor for the city of Albany. And I'm looking forward to learning more about you and how we can assist the community with policing issues to get more involved and continue to grow our city. With that said, I want to welcome you all and thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to meet. This is our first meeting, and I'm excited for what the task that's before us. So we will go to line item 6.2, which is an overview of the task force. And so first we'll start off with the resolutions. Do we have any questions? All right, so our community task force on policing, this is what the intent is: examine policy and practice, especially those that have negatively impact the community, research best practices, define communication pathways of various stakeholders, and ensure an environment where members of the public feel safe when calling on and interacting with the police. All right, we will go to the overview and deliverables. And we can open this up for discussion if anyone wants clarity or to discuss any items further. And Chair Darcy, go ahead.
I would just highlight the examining possible alternatives language as extremely important and significant. I was involved in providing input on creating this overview and the chart of the task force and all of those things. And that was the language that I was especially interested in making sure that we kept in, because I think it's important that we look not only at possible improvements and reforms to policing, but specifically at alternatives to policing, inspired especially by the Reimagining Public Safety Task Force in Oakland, which has issued a very comprehensive list of over 100 recommendations at this point. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Anyone else? And please feel free to raise your hand, because I'll have to go through the screens to find anyone. You know, if you have any comments or would like to add or ask questions about a specific task. Okay, so we have 4 areas of focus that we want to try to dive into. We have 6 months with an option of 3 months. And so I think the best way we can move forward and be productive in our meeting, oh, I'm sorry. Member Downs, go ahead. I just saw your hand. Apologize.
No, you can finish. You should finish. I raised your hand as you were talking. It's just as
Okay.
you started to break down, I wanted to weigh in on that. But you can.
Okay. Okay, thank you. And so, like I said, we have 4 areas that we need to focus. And I think the best way we can move forward and be productive is to take each area one at a time. I'll focus on that specific area, and then we'll move to the next. Our directives is, once we have completed the steps, we will report to the city council. And then it is up to the city council to provide directives on what needs to happen next. So Member Downs, if you want to jump in, go ahead.
Thank you. So I think that's a good framework, especially the reminders of both the breadth of our charge and the amount of time that we have, which is limited. It's 6 months, and in fact, I think one of the months we don't meet. So I do think it's wise to think about how to apportion out the meetings. And one idea that I had as a way of thinking about how to manage our time from here to there, and to create some ability to focus, is to think about 4 areas that many of the pieces do come in on, of course, do reduce down to. And those are policies, training, budget, which eventually includes everything, and oversight. And of these, I would personally suggest that we begin with oversight, in part because there are many models, in part because if we're going to ask the council to do anything, that is a multiple month process as in terms of getting it agendized. And if we make that as a suggestion, that's to create a new board would require an active council. And if we're going to ask for that at the end of 6 months, we're going to risk a sort of long lag in which we fall out of meeting and council has not yet taken up what we've suggested. So my suggestion would be that we do that first. There's a lot of models. We could all suggest them, put them out, and see that if we can prepare that as a first step to council, and then allocate individual meetings to policies, training, and probably multiple meetings to budget because of the number of ways that it touches upon. And then we can watch council's responses to oversight to see whether what we're preparing is a report for this new oversight body that we might recommend, or a report to council. And so that seems to me one way that we could keep ourselves structured and have some sense of how to break down the tasks.
Thank you, Member Downs. Anyone else have any suggestions or recommendations on what we should start first? We definitely want to hear from you. But please feel free to jump in.
Are
Go
we
ahead.
allowed to just kind of popcorn in?
Yeah, just jump in and like you're taking notes, and then we can decide on the prioritization of our steps from our item 3. But right now we're just diving right in.
Sure. I guess hearing Member Downs' ideas, I think really resonate because it is kind of a bandwidth issue. So I really appreciated that. I'm wondering with oversight if structure would be influenced by any like preliminary research we might want to do first, so that like I'm not sure. I wonder if there's like a parallel process there where research could inform any oversight rather than us kind of in a vacuum talking about what the best oversight structure would be.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I can't see you. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Member Locke?
So going off with what Member Timken and also Member Downs just suggested, I do think that there needs to be some foundational baseline knowledge. I'm wondering if this body has the ability to call SMEs to do presentation on sort of the state of policing best practices, or to suggest a review of the literature as a way to get up to speed, to ensure that we're really speaking the same language. Not saying that we have to agree on everything, but that we're at least using the language and the terms in a similar, if not same manner.
SMEs.
Okay, thank you, Member Law.
Oh, I'm sorry, subject matter experts.
I raised my hand. This is Yvette Young. I'm also wondering if we have any police data on who has been stopped, what's their, ethnic breakdown. I mean, in general, what does the City of Albany Police even collect? And then, just listening to what's going on with Berkeley or Oakland, what are the policies that we have in place around who gets access to seeing the videos? Is there body cam videos? Any of those kinds of data that is collected and that is basically reviewed by the public. So that's something I'm really curious about. I'm starting off fresh here for the City of Albany. I have no idea what is being collected.
Okay. Thank you. Anyone else?
I'd just like to second that I think some preliminary research and also just learning about where we're at to start with, what is the status quo, would be helpful before doing anything else. And it might also be helpful before the next meeting to have folks come with some ideas of just generally where they think things could go, or what kinds of examples they find persuasive to start, and then just as a way of kind of getting our feet wet, because as it stands right now, I admit I know very little about Albany Police specifically, aside from my own personal experience.
Thank you so much for sharing. Member Newton?
Yes, the question of what Albany collects, what information they collect, and who has access to it is one of my pet peeves about the police department. They publish a daily bulletin that's online that is so vague, it's more frustrating than helpful. And I've been after the city's neighborhood, whatever it's called. It's supposed to, the Sid Schoenfeld is supposed to be a go-between between us and the police department. But I've been after him for more than a year to try and get more information in that public bulletin. And he said he's trying, but nothing has changed. Well, little has changed. The chief took it up in his conversation with the mayor a few months ago, or a month ago, whatever it was, that they were working with a vendor to improve the amount of information they could put out on that. But I haven't seen any change. And I mean, I could give you examples of how frustrating it is that to read about something that happens on Santa Fe Avenue, where I happen to live. And you will wonder, it's a long street. Where was that catalytic converter swiped? They never, I understand you can't be specific about addresses when there's personal things involved. I think we're not idiots. But it's under the name of the guise of transparency. I think it is not true at all. I mean, I'd rather not even see that stuff because it's so unhelpful. And the neighborhood associate guy we have is, I feel, protecting the police department rather than being the negotiator between them and us. I guess so. Anyway, it's a question of information and how transparent and how available it is. Berkeley's going through that same thing with the audit that they just came out with last month, trying to make more and more information available to the public. We make so very little. The daily bulletin will start out saying that somebody was stopped and then info and log. Well, who gets to see the log? That's all the good stuff. That's the juicy stuff. I mean, I worked at a TV station for a million years, and I'm so sick of listening to police scanners. But we used to listen to those, and you'd find out what was going on. But I can't do that anymore. But there should be a better way for us to find out what our police department is doing, how they spend their time, before we can decide if it's the way we want them to spend their time or not. That's all.
My name is Mary Ramos-Olnick, and I for this gathering more data on who's stopped, why they're stopped. What else?
Thank you so much, Member Newton. Is there anything else before I go to?
What was that? Is somebody going to
There's
talk?
just a lag with Mayor Gary's voice. So I think she was calling on you, but it came in as you were talking. As my...
Oh, sorry. It's confusing. I lost my train of thought. Who stopped? Why? Just more data on the impact on different races in the community. There was something else. I'll think of it later.
I think you were raising your hand earlier. Did you want to say something?
All right, thank you. Is there anyone else before we go to public comment?
I believe
Yeah.
I'd like to say something. I believe we should try to figure out what is the problem we're trying to solve. And I believe that,
Okay, we'll go ahead and go to public comment.
Sorry, there's a lag in her audio, so go ahead, Member Wright, if you can finish what you were saying.
okay. I believe that, we should trust but verify. And I believe that we need to understand what the police is definitely collecting, but also we need to understand what is the problem that we're trying to solve or we're here to solve. If there's information being collected and there for whatever reason we can't have all of the juicy stuff, we should know why we can't have it. And I think that just knowing why can help us. Sometimes the information that we desire is not necessarily information that would be helpful to us, but we need to understand how that information impact one group versus another, and when is it appropriate for someone to see that information. I believe that there are a lot of information out there about police force and what they've done and what they haven't done. But I believe that there are also some professionals out there that are trying their best to work within the framework that they have, and we should approach it from what we have, how we can improve it, and what information that we can get and rightly have access to. Because not all information is good information, and information that may be good for me may be harmful for someone else. And we need to be very, very careful as we criticize a professional organization. I believe that we all here as professionals go into our own profession, trying to do the best job we can, and we may have restrictions that we have to work within. So I want us, as we look at the police department, we bear that in mind, that there are good people trying to do good things out there.
Thank you so much, Member Wright. Chair Dosty, go ahead.
First, I would like to say I believe there is no current data collection that is broken down by race or other demographics. that is going to start. It may have started very recently, but certainly at the time that this task force was being created, that had not happened, and it was being sped up in implementation, but I'm not sure that it has begun at this point. So we don't have much data, if any. I will say that as a transgender person, that is a huge question of, well, we shouldn't record that, we shouldn't even ask that, well, but then we can't prove anything. And so from where I stand, also as a psychiatric survivor with mental illness, like a lot of things that they are highly confidential, should we track this at all? Data is not always the best mechanism, I think. And we've heard anecdotes from the community listening sessions about the problems already that exist in Albany, especially about racial profiling of people driving through Albany, including people who live here, including people who are on the school board who should be like recognized. So we know that that is a problem. And I think we should be looking at that sort of thing. And not getting necessarily caught up in, well, but we need evidence-based data. Data is complicated in a lot of ways, and it's useful for some things, and I don't think it's necessary here, especially when data, like studies on this data, has shown that collecting the data hasn't led to solutions. So I would just caution us to continue to be solution oriented and to remember that this came out of the George Floyd protests and over 100 emails and calls and testimonies at meetings over the course of months about defunding the police. And I think we need to remember that initial call. It did not make it into the draft that we have. The best we got here was examining possible alternatives to police. But where this came from was a mass cry to defund the police in order to reinvest in other services by putting that money into, maybe the police shouldn't be a jack of all trades and a master of none. Yes, they're great people, sure, and professionals trying to do their best. As a captioner, I try to do my best and have restrictions, and I think the industry I'm in is broken, and I think that it needs to be divided up, and I shouldn't be doing tech support and speaking for deaf people and typing and all of these things at the same time. And I think we have the police doing too much. So when we talk about professional restrictions, I think we need to be thinking about changing some of those restrictions and changing some of the tasks we have police doing. So I would just state all of that.
Thank you. Member Oliver?
Yeah, I definitely want to agree with member Dosty. I think that when it comes, I just think it's really important for us to stay focused. And as has been previously stated, also like, I guess, clarify what our point is, like what's the goal. And I think if we're trying to figure out whether or not the police is racist, or, you know, there is racial bias in policing, I think that could easily take us the 6 months to try to figure it out when we maybe already know the answer. And so then I think that would be a real unfortunate situation if we do end up wasting our time in that way. And so I think really trying to get to the crux of the issue, which is, you know, how do we like do harm reduction with all the power that we do have? So I'm sure, I think with that question, I'm sure people already have ideas, whether it is, you know, defunding the police or whether it is all these other initiatives. I think they all should be I think that they all deserve attention. But I definitely want to emphasize that spending all of our time trying to figure out whether, you know, collecting data about who the police is stopping is going to, I think, lead us astray if our point is harm reduction.
Thank you, Member Oliver. Anyone else?
Yeah, I just wanted to chime in. So I completely agree. I think that's a really great point. While I do want to know more about, you know, our policing as it currently stands, I think I hope we can all agree in this task force that institutional racism, systemic racism exists and implicit bias exists. And then if you take those as given, then that it's not, we don't need to point the finger at Albany, our police force being particularly racist, but rather just a product of the entire system that the entire country is a part of. And so then trying to figure out just how, looking at data rather than when we already know, as I think previous members were alluding to, that implicit bias and racist policing, these are problems. And so we could probably waste a lot of time, looking at the minutia of the data. I was just thinking it would be helpful if we had that to back us up in the event, if we do come with some pretty ambitious reforms, to have that in our pocket would be helpful. But I think that's probably more of a luxury given our time frame that we might not be able to afford.
So much. Any other members would like to chime in before we go to public comment, and then I'll bring it back?
I have a comment.
Okay.
I do think that we should look up best practices and then even look at how do we engage the police so that we can actually together achieve those best practices. And knowing that the police themselves as a system, even the way that they were created is in itself a racist, a system that was racist. So this isn't about finger pointing to say these people who work here now are racist, but that it's basically a structural system that has been racist. And so but I do want to say that if we want to look at, as a recommendation, we should be looking at data in the future, because, I did listen, or I was a part of the SEJC, the thing that you did with the consultant. What I heard from the police at that time was, they've been doing a lot of things that make them accountable. And yet for me to hear now that there has been no data collected or any, that kind of a statement is actually appalling. So I just want to put that out there, that while we don't as a group have to focus on that because of time, that should be one of our recommendations, that in order for a system to be accountable, and we know from the data that a police is not going to be accountable to themselves without data, we have to have a system with data for the future.
Thank you. Looks like member, I don't know which one have their hands up first, so you can just jump in. Member Hamdi, go ahead.
Sorry about that. I think it was still left up from before.
Okay. All right, go ahead, member Simpson.
I'm generally agreeing with everything I'm hearing from the other council members. I think just like a nuanced point from my perspective on data is that I think we're having this conversation about how systemic racism, or more specifically like lack of equity for like many groups, exists in a lot of different systems. So like whether it's medicine, real estate, policing, so we can function with the assumption that those, like whether they're racial, like gender equity, like we should probably make assumptions that those disparities exist. And the data, therefore, from the police would have to be provided in order to show us that there is not racial equity that exists, or that there is not racial disparities that exist, or gender disparities that exist. If we make the logical assumption that the policing data for Albany is similar to those of other police departments, then we've made the correct assumption, or that the only data we have is that points to Albany not being an outlier, but being an average. And if that's the case, we need to address it as an average. So that's my thought on data. And I also think it could lead to solutions, because it could be very well that Albany Police does a better job in some areas in terms of racial equity, or some areas in terms of gender equity that we don't need to be focusing on as much. And that's kind of what I was thinking when I thought maybe data first before thinking about oversight board structure. Oh, and one other thing is that I just looked up like Oakland police data and Berkeley police data, and it appears like they have a lot more online. So we wouldn't be functioning in a vacuum. Like if we want to be making adjustments, then data would help.
All right, thank you. And did you want to jump in real fast before I go to public comment?
Yeah, just real quick, just to provide, because all members are asking about our police department. Just wanted to let everyone know that there is, I can share the screen real quick. There's a page on our city website under police department statement concerning George Floyd. At the bottom, it's the FAQ on our police department's policy, procedure, and training. And there are some background information here. So that might be information for the members and for members of the public who are in joining the webinar.
Okay, thank you so much, Ann. All right, so I'm going to have us take a pause and let's go to public comment. And then after that, let's start prioritizing where we want this to go the next meeting. What do we want to, I hear history, I hear data, I hear, oversight, but let's just try to hone it down to 3 top items that we would like to focus on in order for us to get to the end goal. Okay. All right. Let's see what public comments we have. And then, and 2.
I'm sorry, Mayor, did you say 2?
2 minutes, please. Thank you.
Okay, go ahead, Jeremiah.
You're on mute, Jeremiah.
Okay, thank you. Considering next meeting, since Timpkin's going to be dropping out due to the moving, there's only going to be 9 people out of the 12. Maybe we can recommend to city council, maybe we could use some of the sugar sweetened beverage tax money or something, for some pamphlets or some money to go toward some policing or something. Good question is how many homeless referrals have the police made for housing? How many of the homeless people in Albany were actually referred by the homeless or referred by the police compared to how many were just harassed by the police just to get up and get out of Albany? But some solutions are, I've made a pamphlet to where a police officer interacts with let's say a transient or a homeless person. They would just give them this brochure, maybe a bottle of water, and say, hey, here's some resources. We got free laundry on Solano on Thursday. Here's Berkeley Mental Health. Here's Berkeley Food on 9th Street and University. Here's some food banks. And also the police officer can say, hey, let's call Albany Cares right now. Let's call Carol or Anne Marie. Let's get you in a hotel room, emergency situation. So that's a solution for homeless hanging out on Solano Avenue. The police come in, and if the person's acting outrageous, like that one gentleman in the front theater, that's when we 5150 the person because they need mental health. That's a solution. Or some sort of things we can do to offer some help. How many officers are on duty right now? And everybody's entitled to their own opinion. I see some reactions over there, but I do have a lot of good things. I like to take action in the moment and bring some solutions. Let's make some real change. Thank you.
Hi, this is Marchie Marks. I just wanted to say that I really like looking at the screen and seeing.
Thank you for your comment.
and seeing the diversity that's on the screen. I would like you to look at as a starting point, not an ending point by any means, but look at the 8 can't wait. I've looked at it in Albany. Albany follows through on some of them, but some of them, for example, one of the 8 can't wait is don't shoot at a moving car. In Albany, it says, well, it's not a good idea, but if you have to, you have to. I mean, that's not exactly what it says, but that's how I take it. So I'd like you to look at that. I'd also like you to look at traffic stops, doing something different besides traffic stops, because that causes a lot of issues for many people. And this committee coming up with a safer way to handle traffic stops would be something really great for the city. And so thank you for all your work. I really appreciate it.
And that's it. I think maybe our mayor is having audio technical difficulty tonight. So I'll use this chance to apologize to the group earlier when you guys went around introducing yourself. I omitted to.
So let's just start from the.
Sorry. Okay, mayor's back.
Go ahead, Ann. I'm sorry.
And because I was just using the opportunity to say that I omitted to call on a few members to introduce themselves, and to wait for your return, I was going to have them introduce themselves, if that's okay with you.
That's fine. And then we'll go ahead and present the 3 items, and then we'll wrap this meeting up. Sounds like a plan?
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead. Thank you.
Member Olenek.
Hi, my name is Mary Ramos Olenek, and I've been an activist for racial justice since Rodney King, and very interested in this topic because I also have mixed race children and a grandchild, and I'm very excited to get started on this and finding solutions to reduce harm.
Thank you. Member Wright.
Hi, my name is Anthony Wright, and I run Albany Berkeley Soccer Club. And so I have approximately 2,000 kids straddled between both cities that at some point or another interact with both city. I've had some personal contact with the police department, one very nice and some not so nice, but overall I think that my responsibility here is to make sure that I speak with one voice with the committee and try to come to a solution that can better create a department that can better serve our community. Thank you very much.
And Member Newton.
I think you raised your hand instead of unmuting.
How's that? Better? Okay. I've lived in the same house, my wife and I, for 48 years on Santa Fe Avenue. So I'm the cranky old guy on the block. And I've watched the police department change over the years. And it's changed from sort of Officer Krumke and some of the officers little league umpiring and being friendly to an aggressive stance that the police department takes. It looks like they're leaving tomorrow for Iraq, the way they dress. It just isn't necessary. And I want them to relax and maybe trust us a little bit more, but we'll see how that goes. That's all.
I hope I didn't miss anyone else for the introduction. Mayor, back to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Anne. Apologies again. We'll go ahead and I think Member Downs had his hand up first.
Thanks. So it's been great, really fascinating hearing from people's perspectives, and there are so many things that that we want to know. And I'm just trying to think about how we can make sure that we don't look up and we're, I think all of us want to, make sure that we're doing things and doing the right things as we see them. And I want to make sure that we don't, what can we do to ensure that we don't look up 4 or 5 months down the road and our time is almost gone. So I wonder a couple of things, one of which, if it's possible for members to submit, whether that's to Mayor Gary as the chair of the task force, or to Clerk Sue, or to someone else, questions that could be posted so that they're visible, so that they're not a Brown Act problem. It may well be that, some of them do correspond to the FAQs, and then, that can help people get directed to those. It may well be that some of those don't, but do have answers in other places, or that we could obtain so that we can start to collect it together. I think if we rely on calling them out in the meeting, we're going to end up, it'll take more time than if we can find a way to get those entered into some kind of system that we can use to work through. And the other thing I'll say is that there are lots of things that I would want us to address, and that I'm glad to address. And I also, my belief of governance is that governance happens when there's a counterweight. And so I will keep pressing that we can do lots of things, many of which I will support, but if we do not emphasize some way of building a system of accountability within the city, whatever format that takes, of an oversight commission, and advisory board, something else, if we don't do that, my expectation is that all of the things that we do will dissolve over the next few years. And our system of governance is premised upon checks and balances, on the idea that we may not reach perfection, but that if we build in checks and balances, there are places where you can get continual improvement and also continual monitoring. And so I'm less worried about whether we make a perfect committee, though I have every confidence that you all are going to do a perfect job, and more about, are we building a structure that is going to still be monitored and kept in place after we're dissolved and years after. And so I do think there's lots that we want to know, but to me, every path we get to, from the boldest to the most reformist that I've heard on the table, they all have to have an oversight commission, or none of them will end up actually making long-lasting change. And that is, I do believe, the one that will take the council the longest to act upon, because it will require a new enabling legislation. So I hope we don't push that toward the back in our understandable desire to want to know so many new things. So I'd hope there's some way we can balance those two goals.
So thank you, Member Downs. With the information that the clerk provided to answer some of the questions, the history, I think, Member Downs bring up a great point. A lot of that is readily available for us. And I would charge you all to read that. Possibly some of the questions may be what you're looking for. The answers are there, right? If not, definitely submit those questions to us, and then you can, do it anonymous or however. So when we come back to our next meeting, we could address those questions and then move forward. But I believe everything is up there for the most part. I think there was a question about the police tracking data. We definitely should inquire, since our last time we had the town hall and meetings, find out where they're at. So maybe we can have that on our next agenda, just to give us a quick update on what that looks like, if something has been implemented, right? And then that way we can move from that standpoint of collecting the data, because we should have it or not. Either way, we will find out the next meeting. But I definitely think we should start building that foundation on what we want things to look like, right? So looking at their policies, I think that was a part of that link, looking at the policies that are already in place. Is there changes we need to make in that as far as as we're building, right? Looking at some of the training that is in place. How often are they taking training? Is there mandated training? So those are some of the things that will help us be able to shape what we would present to the council. And then we can go from there as far as, what other elements we want to add to, based on the information we gather within ourselves. So I'll yield the floor, and I'll let Chair Dosty go ahead.
Thank you. I agree. I think there are some obvious recommended readings specifically to do with Albany. I read the manual, the training manual, the policies and procedures, the FAQ, the union agreement, all of those things. And I think police unions, right, are also going to be an important part of this because they control a lot of how you can fire or not fire and discipline or not discipline someone, a police officer. So, but yes, the point here is I think there are a couple of recommended ratings, and I would be happy to pull those together and send those to staff. I still have them from when I was going through and reading everything I could on Albany PD specifically. I would be interested in also providing other recommended ratings, but I think this is where we could get into politics, and those might especially be like, well, you certainly don't have to read them. But I would want it to be able to be distributed in a everyone could contribute way. If people find approaches that some folks are taking, or from the academic field of critical criminology, like relevant papers or interesting things, for everyone to be able to contribute that. But I'm not sure if we feel like that would take up too much time. So that's an open question. I forgot to note just quickly that I disagree with some of the answers to the FAQ. For instance, number 14, would it be possible for Albany police to not carry guns? Their answer is no. I think that is reductive. So I think we should take the FAQs as the Albany Police Department's response, and not necessarily, an objective truth, but representing where they're at. So, okay.
Right. Go ahead, member Long. I believe you're next. And then Newton after that. Go ahead, Eva.
I would like to hear, I would like to read more about even what the SEJC had made recommendations around. So, so that we're basically doing the additional work that needs to be done with this clear focus. And so that's something I'm really interested in. And if there are even specific minutes that we should read from SEJC or anything like that, I would like for us to have some common background before our next meeting. It would be great.
I would agree. We do need to have that. I think several of you have brought, we need the foundation on how we do build new systems or new policies and procedures. So Ann, and I'll ask you, is there any harm with Chair Dosty sharing that information, or would it go through you? How would we get it to the members so they can have what they need as far as directing them where to locate this information?
Chair Dosty can definitely email me information. I could distribute to the group along with members of the public if it's part of the next agenda packet. And or we can find out which video and send you information on the video of the meeting.
Okay. And will that work for everyone? Okay. I will go to member, the screen keeps moving. Member Locke, I believe you had your hand up.
Point of clarification to the committee and to the chair. So the process that we've identified based on that previous question is that we are going to submit recommendations for things to review, foundational information. What is the process of submitting that to the chair? Are we going to do that via email? And then that will be made and distributed to the other members before the next meeting. I'm just trying to clarify process for that.
Okay. And if you can clarify that, please.
I'm sorry, I thought it was just that Chair Dosty was sharing some information, but I cannot be collecting information from, we had this similar situation with another advisory body. As a staff member, I cannot be collecting information from everybody and distributing it unless it's whatever that needs to be collected should be as part of the public meeting and distributed at the same time to the member of the task force as well as members of the public. So you guys need to have access to the information all at the same time.
Okay.
I just have one more comment to make.
Okay.
When I was working for Alameda County, I was on loan to the probation department. And it was when they were basically building their juvenile justice center. And what we did was, as a layperson who wasn't a probation person, but wanting to understand what are the forces that would promote the changes that we would be interested in, we looked at also what were the funding opportunities. And so I don't know, for instance, if Member Locke would know some of this information or any other members, but if there are also funding opportunities that would help to support the kind of reform that we would be interested in making recommendations for, whether it's accountability systems and data collection systems, I think that would be something, you know, as looking at, if we did a SWOT analysis, you know, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, the funding opportunities would help to sway so that it's not the impediment to the reason why we want to have the change. So if there are those kinds of things, even if we don't need them right now, I would love for our group and others to start looking for that kind of information for us.
Thank you. And then Chair Dosty, go ahead, and then we'll wrap it up. Am I still?
You're a little bit slow, but mostly intelligible.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. I just wanted to clarify. So there were two things. One, I think is fine for me to send to Anne, and I'll ask her to confirm, but everything the city already has public on its website, but in a couple of different places, like the contract, the union contract, the policies and procedures, the training manual, the budget, the SEJC past minutes, the interim racial equity impact plan report, those things. I think that is fine for me to gather, send to Anne, because they're just links to things already public on the city website, and then she can send them to you. Is that correct?
Correct.
Correct.
Then the other thing, which was my question that I think I mixed up in there a little bit, is I'm wondering if we want to bring other resources that we have, whether it's models of things, whether it is like knowledge about funding structures and stuff like that, and share those. It sounds like, and I think we could do it as we submit them to Anne or a liaison, and they get published with the agenda so that we all see them at the same time as the public about 5 days before the meeting. So we probably don't have time to go in depth through all of them, but we then have them in the same sort of transparency process and we can glance over them. I don't know if we want to use our time on that, but that was my suggestion. And does that work?
So if they are just resources, for example, resources from other agencies, and like you said, if there are links and just other resources, I can share with the group. But what I can't do is collect each individual member's recommendation and put it together and share with the group.
Okay.
That will have to be done in the public forum.
Sure. But then, like, if it's another model or a paper, does that fall under it's a link?
Another model from a different city?
Mm-hmm. Or like an academic paper or an activist group's writing.
Yes, as long as it's not your feedback. It is basically information that I'm just sharing, but not your feedback, your input, or your recommendation, or your opinion about anything.
Nothing you've written.
Right.
Okay.
Member Downs?
So thank you for that clarification, Anne and Corey. So I think I would recommend that we do that, that everything that we send will be visible to the entire public. It'll be as if we're submitting documents when we're on a commission, and it is important and just that we ensure we're not doing private communication since we're acting as, for the public. But then that's good. So that I think it sounds to me both links to resources, but also potential questions, not answers maybe, and that those will be visible to the to any of the public who looks on our agenda for the supporting documents. But they'll also be visible for us. And it seems to me if we can aim to do that in the between now and the next meeting or the meeting after, we may be able to establish much larger groundwork than we would just in the meeting itself.
Great. I would agree. All right, so if we're on the agreement, sorry, I don't want to call you by your first name, Corey. Chair Dosty, she'll go ahead and share that information. So the next agenda, we will gather this information. Hopefully you'll do your research, have your questions prepared for anything, any models that you want to try to formulate. Let's start building, because the next meeting, I would like us to start putting the pieces together and laying out the framework on what we would like it to be presented to the city council. And I think with the research, the history, and everything we find together, we should be able to be productive in building upon that structure and that framework to move this committee forward. Are we all in agreement? I think there's one public comment and I think there's 1 minute, and then we'll go ahead and adjourn the meeting unless it's that hand was up while we were talking.
Hi, thank you. Yeah, Chair Downs and everybody. Looks like we're working on some solutions here. Yeah, a lot of policies. I think that's a great goal, and the outcome is to eventually possibly create a policy, like no stranglehold, or I think one of the things we're really mostly focusing on here that is a big problem with the police is the racial profiling. And that's why we're here, because of racial profiling. In the first place was George Floyd, Black Lives Matter, and now this task force is created. So race is a big thing, racial profiling in the department. So that's one good thing to work on. If let's say an officer, let's say we should always have 2 officers respond to a scene or an incident. Let's say we have an African-American homeless person. We need to send an African-American police officer, that way you've got the same race. Let's say, if it's African-American homeless person and you send out 2 white officers, you might have another George Floyd thing. So it might be a good policy to implement. If you encounter with somebody, the second officer that comes is possibly that ethnic background. And also, I think we need some seriously mental health thing going on, because Albany has nothing right now.
Thank you so much for your comment. Set it in. Sorry, go ahead.
Just one more comment. I'll make it really quick. Please watch the listening session that was run by Brian Doss, who is on the Albany School Board, African-American member of the school board. He ran a listening session where many members from the Albany community called in to talk about their experiences with the police. So I'd really recommend that be on your list of things that you listen to before your next meeting. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, I'll go ahead and bring it back. Chair Darcy, just really quick, and then we'll go ahead and address any additional questions before we adjourn the meeting. Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, I think it's important to respond to the public comment
That's
about that has been sort of tried, and studies have shown that marginalized race, people of color, officers can be harsher on their fellow people of color as an attempt to seem like they're not biased. So it doesn't really work out.
All right, thank you. Are there any other questions? If you need clarity or anything prior to our next meeting before we adjourn? All right. I want to thank you so much for taking the time out to be a part of the committee. Sorry for my internet issues. I was blocking in and out, but I'm so happy to see everyone here, and I'm excited on the task that has been placed before us. And if we continue on this road, we will be able to make a change within our community. Thank you so much, and you have a good evening. Meeting adjourned.